This is the moment everything changes. What I'm about to reveal will provide definitive scientific proof that the object that crashed in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, was Nazi technology that had been under American development for 20 years. The evidence I've gathered over the past year is so compelling that it's impossible to dismiss, and it proves that we've been systematically lied to about one of the most significant events in modern history. For decades, the Kecksburg incident remained shrouded in government denials and witness testimonies that couldn't be scientifically verified. But modern technology has finally given us the tools to uncover the truth that's been buried beneath Pennsylvania soil for 60 years. 6 months ago, I gained access to ground-penetrating radar data from the Kecksburg crash site that had never been made public. What this data revealed will shock you to your core. The radar scans detected a large metallic object buried approximately 12 feet below the surface at the exact location where witnesses reported seeing the craft crash in 1965. The object is roughly 15 feet in diameter and appears to be largely intact despite the impact 60 years ago. Most significantly, the radar signature indicates a hollow interior with internal structures that are consistent with a manufactured device, not a natural meteorite or conventional aircraft debris. But finding a buried object is one thing, proving its origin is another. Working with Dr. James Peterson, a geophysicist from Penn State University who conducted the original survey, I arranged for core samples to be taken from the site using specialized drilling equipment. What we found scattered throughout the soil around the impact site was extraordinary: metallic fragments, some as large as coins, distributed in a pattern consistent with a high-speed impact and subsequent explosion. I had these fragments analyzed by 3 independent laboratories, and the results were identical across all 3 tests. The metal composition includes alloys that were not used in American or Soviet aircraft manufacturing during the 1960s. Specifically, the fragments contain a combination of aluminum, magnesium, and rare earth elements in ratios that match German wartime metallurgical techniques documented in captured Nazi research files. But the most shocking discovery came when Dr. Maria Santos, a metallurgist specializing in historical metal analysis, conducted isotope analysis on the largest fragments. Isotope analysis is like a fingerprint for metal. It tells you not just what the metal is made of, but where and when it was manufactured. The isotope signatures from the Kecksburg fragments match samples from German industrial facilities that were operating during World War II. This isn't circumstantial evidence. This is scientific proof that the metal fragments buried at Kecksburg were manufactured using German techniques during the 1940s. The only way this makes sense is if the crashed object was constructed from materials that originated in Nazi Germany and were later incorporated into American experimental aircraft programs through Operation Paperclip. The analysis gets even more specific. Dr. Santos identified trace elements of thorium and beryllium in the fragments, elements that were being researched by Nazi scientists for use in experimental propulsion systems. These materials have no practical application in conventional aircraft construction, but they were essential components in the theoretical propulsion systems that German scientists were developing as part of their most classified research programs. The spectroscopic analysis reveals something even more extraordinary. The metal shows evidence of exposure to intense electromagnetic fields, the kind that would be generated by the exotic propulsion systems that Nazi scientists were theorizing about in their research notes. This isn't damage from impact or fire. This is evidence that the metal was part of a functioning propulsion system that was operating at the time of the crash. The physical evidence is supported by documentary evidence that I've uncovered through months of research in military archives. I've found shipping manifests from 1946 showing materials being transported from captured German facilities to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The manifests list experimental aircraft components and propulsion research materials, but provide no specific details about what was being shipped. More significantly, I've discovered budget allocations from the 1950s and 1960s showing massive funding for what are described as Germanic technology development programs at Wright-Patterson. These programs received hundreds of millions of dollars in funding over 2 decades, far more than would be necessary for simple research into captured German documents. This was funding for active development and testing of Nazi-derived technologies. The timeline of this funding is crucial. The programs reached their peak funding levels in the early 1960s, exactly when you'd expect if the American military was preparing to conduct test flights of experimental aircraft based on Nazi technology. The Kecksburg incident occurred in 1965, just as this funding was beginning to decline, suggesting the programs were being shut down or moved to even more classified facilities after the crash exposed them to public scrutiny. I've also uncovered personnel records showing that Nazi scientists brought to America through Operation Paperclip were indeed working on projects at Wright-Patterson during the 1960s. Dr. Hans Kohler, who had been involved in Die Glock research in Germany, was employed at Wright-Patterson from 1947 until his death in 1967. His work was classified at the highest levels, and his research notes remain sealed to this day. The witness testimonies I collected become even more compelling when viewed alongside this scientific evidence. The hieroglyphic-like markings that multiple witnesses described seeing on the Kecksburg object match symbols found in Nazi research documents that I've obtained from German archives. These symbols were part of a classification system used by SS researchers to identify different experimental technologies. Margaret Thompson's sketch of the markings, which I showed you in previous episodes, contains 3 symbols that are identical to markings found in Die Glock research notes. The probability of this being a coincidence is essentially 0. The witnesses in Kecksburg were describing real Nazi technology that they couldn't possibly have known about from any other source. The electromagnetic effects that witnesses reported are also consistent with the theoretical propulsion systems that Nazi scientists were developing. Multiple witnesses described their car radios failing, their watches stopping, and other electronic devices malfunctioning in the area around the crash site. These effects are exactly what you'd expect from the exotic propulsion systems described in captured German research documents. I've discovered that the military response to Kecksburg was coordinated directly from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, not from local military installations. Phone logs from December 9, 1965, show multiple calls between the crash site and Wright-Patterson, including conversations with personnel who were identified as specialists in recovered technology assessment. This wasn't a routine meteor recovery. This was a specialized operation to recover classified technology that had been under development for 20 years. The cover-up that followed bears the hallmarks of the secrecy protocols that were developed to protect Operation Paperclip. Witnesses were intimidated using the same techniques that had been used to silence people who might have knowledge of Nazi scientists working in American programs. Documents were classified using the same systems that had been used to hide the extent of Nazi technology integration into American military research. What makes this evidence so compelling is that it all points to the same conclusion from multiple independent sources. The scientific analysis of the fragments, the documentary evidence from military archives, the witness testimonies, and the pattern of government secrecy all support the theory that the Kecksburg object was Nazi technology that had been under American development since the end of World War II. The implications of this discovery go far beyond just solving the mystery of what crashed in Pennsylvania. If the American military was successfully developing and testing Nazi experimental aircraft in the 1960s, it means that some of the most advanced technology in our current military arsenal might have originated from Nazi research programs. It means that the technological superiority that America has maintained for decades might be built on a foundation that we've been systematically lied to about. The evidence I've presented today proves beyond reasonable doubt that the Kecksburg incident was not a UFO crash, a meteor impact, or space debris. It was the crash of an experimental aircraft based on Nazi technology that had been under American development for 20 years. The government's 60-year cover-up wasn't protecting us from knowledge of extraterrestrial visitors. It was protecting us from knowledge of how deeply Nazi technology had been integrated into American military programs. In the final part of this investigation, I'm going to reveal what this discovery means for our understanding of American history and military development. You'll learn about other incidents that now make sense when viewed through the lens of the Nazi connection. Most importantly, you'll discover what this means for the future and why this information has been kept secret for so long. The truth about Kecksburg is just the beginning of a story that will fundamentally change how you view the relationship between Nazi Germany and modern American military power.